If you ask me what one of the hardest parts about being a dad after a divorce, I don't think my answer would be the divorce itself. Yeah, that obviously sucks, but there's something that comes after it, and I don't think you really understand until you live it. It's quiet. Your kids are there. The house has life in it. Somebody needs something. Somebody's hungry. Somebody can't find a shoe that's apparently been missing for 6 months, even though they wore it yesterday. And then they leave. The door shuts, and all of a sudden, nobody needs you. At least that's what it feels like. And I think that was one of the hardest adjustments for me. Because I was still dad. I didn't stop being dad because my kids went back to their mom's house. But for the next couple days, I didn't really know what to do with myself. And when you're already dealing with divorce, loneliness, failure, wondering what the hell your life is supposed to look like now, that quiet can get pretty damn loud. Welcome back to Dad After. Life changed. Fatherhood didn't. Because your story, it isn't over. So, imagine you asked me this sitting across from me somewhere. Maybe we're having coffee. Maybe we're sitting outside after jujitsu. Maybe you're going through a divorce right now and you're trying to figure out what life is about to look like. And you ask, what's one of the hardest parts? I'll tell you this. It's learning how to live in two different worlds. There's a world where your kids are with you and your dad in the most obvious ways possible. Then there's a world where they aren't there. And nobody really teaches you how to live in that one. I sure as hell didn't know how. At first, the goal was just to survive the days without them. Keep myself busy enough, find something to do. Don't sit still for too long. And then eventually you realize that it might not get you through the weekend. But it isn't really a life. What do you actually do with the time when your kids aren't with you? And maybe even more important, who are you during that time? The strangest things about divorce is how normal everything can look when out on the outside, while your entire life feels different. You can still have the same couch, same kitchen, same TV, same truck sitting outside, but your family isn't living under one roof anymore. And when your kids leave, you notice the difference immediately. When they're there, you might catch yourself wanting 5 minutes of silence. Just 5 minutes. Then somehow you get an entire evening of it and you think, alright, this sucks. Because what I didn't realize before divorce was how much of my identity was tied to constantly being needed. Dad, can you get me something? Dad, can you fix this? Dad, he's bothering me. Dad, she took my thing. Dad, what are we eating? It can drive you crazy. But there's something about being needed that gives your day direction. Then when they leave and nobody is asking you anything, you can eat whatever you want, watch whatever you want, go wherever you want. You can stay up, stay out as late as you want. And you'd think that would feel like freedom. And yeah, obviously, sometimes it does, but sometimes it feels like somebody removed the walls of your life and said, all right, you've got an extra 3 days. What are you going to do with it? And I didn't always have a good answer. That's one of the weird contradictions about being a divorced dad. Before divorce, you might think, man, if I just had a weekend to myself, I could get so much done. Or I could finally relax. Then divorce gives you those weekends, whether you wanted them or not. And suddenly relaxation can feel uncomfortable. Because this wasn't exactly the way you pictured getting free time. You didn't earn a vacation. Your family split. That's different. And I think there can be some guilt attached to enjoying yourself. You go do something fun when your kids are with their mom and there's a little voice in the back of your head. Should I be enjoying this? Does that make me a bad dad? Should I miss them more? Then the opposite happens. You spend the whole weekend sitting around miserable because you miss them. And that isn't healthy either. That was something I had to figure out. Missing your kids doesn't mean you have to punish yourself until they come back. And enjoying a day without them doesn't mean you love them any less. Both can be true. You can miss your kids and still have a good Saturday. That took me a while to understand. There were definitely times after my divorce where I handled that empty time badly. I've talked about this before, but when I didn't have my kids, there was a stretch where I drank a lot more than I should have. It was easy. There wasn't anybody there depending on me that night. So I could pour a drink, then another, and the whole point wasn't really the whiskey. The point was that being buzzed made the quiet easier for a little while. That's the trap. Anything that keeps you from having to sit with yourself can start feeling useful. Alcohol, work, dating, even something healthy like training can become a place to hide if you're using it because you absolutely cannot stand being alone with your own thoughts. I'm not saying that you shouldn't work. I work a lot. I train. I'm building businesses. Those are good things. But I've had to ask myself a question sometimes. Am I doing this because I actually want to build something? Or am I doing this because I don't want to go home? Those aren't always the same thing. And sometimes the answer is a little bit of both. If you're asking me what to do with the time, I don't actually think the real problem is finding activities. We can find things to do. Hell, give me enough caffeine and I can invent 17 projects before lunch. The harder part is figuring out what that time means. Because when your kids aren't there, you start wondering whether you're still doing anything that matters. Especially if being a father is the thing in your life that gives you the most purpose. You spend all week looking forward to seeing them. Then when they leave, it can feel like your real life just drove away. I've had moments like that, and I think that's where you have to correct something in your own head. Your life does not stop when your kids leave, and your responsibility as a father doesn't stop either. The days they aren't with you still count as days you're their dad. That one took me some time. Because being a good father isn't only what I do when they're physically standing in front of me. What am I doing with my finances when they aren't there? What am I doing with my health? What kind of man am I becoming? Am I building something stable? Am I dealing with my own shit? Because all of that walks back through the door with me when my kids come home. If I spend 3 days destroying myself, they get that version of dad. If I spend those 3 days getting myself back on track, they get that version. So no, the days without them aren't meaningless. They might actually be some of the most important days. Now there's another side to this, and I'm still learning this one, because my natural response to an empty calendar is, cool, let's work. There's always something I could be doing. Total backflow solutions, dad after, blood trail, whatever project I've convinced myself is gonna change my life this month. And building things gives me purpose. I genuinely enjoy it. But I also know what happens when every empty space gets filled with work. Eventually, you aren't building anymore. You're running. You're afraid of stopping. Because stopping means you might feel whatever you've been trying not to feel. And that can become its own version of being unhealthy. I think some divorced dads do this because it looks respectable. Nobody's going to pull you aside and say, man, I'm worried about you. You've been working really hard. People usually congratulate you. They call you driven. They say you're killing it. Meanwhile, you may be completely exhausted and lonely. So part of figuring out the time alone, at least for me, has been learning that I don't need to turn every hour into productivity. Some nights it's okay to sit down, watch something, cook dinner, go to sleep early, not accomplish anything impressive. It sounds simple. For some of us, it isn't. And man, I'm not going to lie to you. Sometimes it's just lonely. There isn't some clever lesson that makes that go away. You can have friends, you can train with people, you can talk to people all day and still go home alone. That's different. Especially if you're a relationship person. If you want somebody in your life, if you liked having a partner, if part of the future you still imagine has somebody sitting beside you, the empty time makes you feel the absence more. I can have a productive day and still think, damn, it would be nice to have somebody here. That's just true. And dating can make it even stranger because now you're trying to figure out a completely different part of your life while still being a dad. You meet somebody and wonder if it's going anywhere. You wonder whether she's somebody you could actually build something with. Maybe it ends. Now the house feels quiet in a new way. There's always a temptation in those moments to treat loneliness like an emergency. Like you need to fix it right now. Call somebody. Download another dating app. Find somebody to talk to. Anything. So you don't feel alone tonight. I think I've had to learn that loneliness isn't always a problem that needs an immediate solution. Sometimes you're just lonely. That sucks. But you can survive being lonely for an evening without making some decision you're going to regret tomorrow. That's growth too. I know this sounds kind of cheesy when I say it, but I think it matters. You have to learn how to be alone without feeling abandoned. Those are not the same thing. And after divorce, they can feel exactly the same. Everybody leaves. The house gets quiet. Your brain immediately starts telling you a story. Nobody wants me here. I screwed everything up. This is what my life is going to be forever. But you're not seeing the future. You're sitting in a quiet room on a Tuesday. Your brain can be incredibly dramatic when nobody is there to interrupt it. So part of the work is learning to catch yourself. I still struggle with it. I can be sitting there thinking about relationships, money, businesses, my future, wondering whether everything is going to work out. Then sometimes I have to remind myself, nothing actually happened right now. I'm just sitting here. And I don't mean to ignore your problems. I mean, don't let every quiet night become a courtroom where you put your entire life on trial. Sometimes you're allowed to just exist. That sounds stupid until you've spent years feeling like you have to be doing something every second. So if you were actually sitting across from me and said, "All right, Glenn, that's great, but what the hell do I actually do?" I tell you not to build some giant divorced dad self-improvement program. You're probably not going to follow it anyways. I wouldn't. I'd make the days serve a purpose. That's different. When my kids aren't with me, I want some of that time to help build the life they're eventually coming back to. Maybe that means I work. Maybe that means I train. Maybe I take care of something I've been putting off because it's harder to do when the kids are here. But then I also need part of that time to just be a person. Go eat somewhere. Watch something stupid. Go hunting if you have somebody to go with. Call a friend. Sit outside. Whatever actually sounds good. And then there's another piece that I think a lot of men avoid. Deal with something. You don't have to turn your entire weekend into therapy. But maybe one thing you have been avoiding. Maybe you need to think through your finances. Maybe you need to have a difficult conversation. Maybe you need to admit that you're still angry about something. Maybe you need to pray about something instead of pretending you're not worried. The quiet can be brutal, but it can also give you room to hear yourself again. That's useful if you stop treating silence like the enemy. This is a hard one. And I'm saying this to myself too. Your kids cannot be responsible for fixing your loneliness. That isn't their job. I think divorced parents can accidentally put that weight on their children. Maybe not by saying it directly, but the kid starts feeling like Dad is sad when I'm gone. Dad needs me here. Dad has nothing when I'm not here. That's too much for a kid. I want my kids to know I miss them. Of course I miss them. I want them to know I love having them with me. But I don't want them worrying about whether Dad can survive Tuesday night without them. That means I have to build a life. Not instead of them, around them. There's a difference. They should be part of my life, not the only thing keeping my life standing. And I think becoming that kind of father actually makes you safer for your kids emotionally. They can go enjoy their time with mom without wondering whether Dad is sitting somewhere falling apart because they left. That matters. I think this one can hit divorced dads pretty hard. You start making a life outside of your kids. Maybe you find hobbies again. You start dating. You make friends. You take a trip. And some part of you feels guilty. Like maybe moving forward means you're somehow moving away from them. I do not believe that. If I build a good life, my kids benefit from that. If I become healthier, they benefit. If I eventually find somebody I love and build a good relationship, they benefit from seeing that. If my businesses succeed and create stability, they benefit. A father who has a life is not automatically a father who is neglecting his children. The question is whether that life makes you more present when your kids are actually there. Because there's another trap. Some dads feel so guilty about the days they don't have their kids that when they do get them, they try to make everything perfect. Every weekend becomes Disney World. Nobody gets told no. Dads become entertainment director. I don't think kids need that either. They need normal dad. They need dinner. They need rules. They need somebody to tell them to brush their teeth. They need a boring Tuesday. That's family. You don't have to compensate for divorce every second they're with you. Just be their dad. There's something else I didn't expect. Sometimes the hardest part isn't the whole weekend without them. It's the first couple of hours after they leave. That transition. They're there. Your nervous system doesn't really get a memo. You walk back inside and it feels weird. That's usually when I'm most likely to feel restless. Like I should immediately do something. Go somewhere, start working, find noise. And I've had to learn not to make too much out of that feeling. Sometimes the first hour just sucks. That's it. You don't have to solve your whole life. Give yourself a minute. Clean the kitchen. Take a shower. Go train. Go get you some dinner. Eventually your brain adjusts. Then when your kids come back, it adjusts again. You're moving between two versions of your week. That becomes normal after a while. Not necessarily easy, but normal. There's a Christian side to this for me too. Quiet can be uncomfortable because there's nowhere to hide. And sometimes that's exactly where God gets your attention. I've had periods where I wanted God to tell me exactly what the hell he was doing. What's the plan, dude? Where's this going? Am I gonna have the family I want again? Are these businesses gonna work? Am I gonna find somebody? And there usually isn't a voice coming through the ceiling with a 5-year plan. I wish there was. That would be convenient. Most of the time, I've just had to keep moving with whatever is in front of me. And when I look backward, I can see God in parts of my life where I definitely couldn't see him while I was standing in them. So on the quiet nights when I start wondering if this is just what my life is now, I have to remember that I've thought about that before. And life changed again. That doesn't mean I get everything I want. It means I don't know enough about tomorrow to declare tonight permanent. That's a big difference. There's one thing I'd tell you to do with those days without your kids is this. Build something they get to come back to. I don't just mean money. Build peace. Build your discipline. Build a home that feels good when they walk through the door. Build yourself into somebody that you respect. Because divorce can make you feel like you've lost the life you were supposed to have. And maybe you did lose a version of it. I did. There are things I thought my life was gonna look like that simply aren't true anymore. And yeah, it hurts. But I still get to decide what to build next. That's where the after part comes in. I'm not trying to rebuild the exact life that I had. I'm building from here. And the days my kids aren't with me are part of that construction. They aren't wasted time between the important days. They are the important days. So if you asked me, what should I do when my kids aren't here? I'd tell you this. At first, you're probably going to hate some of it. The quiet is going to feel unnatural. You'll catch yourself staring at your phone. You might want to fill every second with something because you don't know how to sit in the house by yourself yet. Give it time. Don't destroy yourself trying to avoid being lonely. Don't work yourself into the ground just because being productive feels safer than being still. And don't feel guilty because you laughed or had a good day while your kids were somewhere else. Your children don't need you miserable to prove you love them. They need you healthy. They need you building. They need you becoming somebody who can handle the life in front of them. And sometimes that work happens when nobody is watching. The days your kids aren't with you still count as days you're their dad. I keep coming back to that because what I do with those days affects who they get when they come back. And I definitely haven't mastered it. There are still nights I get lonely. There are still days I work too much because work is easier than sitting still. There are still times I wish my life looked different. But I don't look at the quiet the same way that I used to. It isn't proof that I lost everything. It's just space. And what I build inside that space is up to me. So if your kids just left and the house feels way too quiet right now, you don't have to figure out the rest of your life tonight. Make dinner. Go train. Call somebody. Go to sleep early. Tomorrow, do something that moves your lives an inch in the right direction. Then when your kids come back through that door, be dad. That part didn't change. This is dad after. Life changed. Fatherhood didn't. Because your story, it isn't over.